My name is Paul Adler, and I've been privileged this year to help organize the program for our meetings. I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of you all. Firstly, to thank you all. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for submitting papers, for volunteering to review them, for traveling here, presenting, chairing, facilitating these sessions. It's your volunteer efforts that make this organization the great experience that it is. Thank you above all to the folks who stepped up to serve as PDW program chairs for your various divisions and interest groups, the caucus committee, the theme committees. These volunteers have put in countless hours to make this a program that you can learn from and benefit from. We also owe a huge debt of thanks to our headquarters staff. The degree of professionalism that they bring to the organization of an event like this is unimaginable if you haven't been on the inside of it. If you see anybody wearing a badge with a little white sticker underneath it that says staff, please stop and give them a big hug. Well, you'll calibrate the body distance necessary, but try to give them a big hug for us, because the work that they've put into this, the countless hours they've invested of their private lives into making this happen is incalculable. We need to thank too, I should say, if that volunteer effort on your part and the professionalism of our headquarters staff is are critical resources for our success. There's a critical complementary capability that our strategy colleagues remind us is essential, and that's financial resources. So I'd like to begin by thanking our sponsors. We have several schools who've stepped up and offered us very generous support, and to take them one at a time, I'll just introduce them. And I'll give them a plaque, we'll take a photo, I'll ask them to stand over here, and then when we're done, we'll give them a big round of applause for the support they've offered us. So we have from IMD, representing IMD, Maury Pipel. Actually, if we hold applause until we do this at the end, that'll make it a little quicker maybe. And then we have the Vienna University of Economics and Business, not represented here today. Society for Human Resource Management, Deb Cohen. Applause is a good idea. Let me retract that. That's it. They deserve it, so thank you. Copenhagen Business School, represented by Per Holten Andersen. And the Eisenberg School of Management at UMass Amherst, Bruce Skaggs. The Norwegian Business School by Randy Lunan. And the European School of Management Technology, represented by Juke Lay. And finally, the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia, represented by Robert Bruner. And one big round of applause for these essential partners. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. Okay. This way. Thank you. Oh, photo time. Oh my goodness. You got it? The logistics of meeting management, never my forte. Each year we give our meeting a theme, a thematic focus, and devote most of Sunday's session to that theme. And the themes have varied over the years. Some of you will remember, many of you will remember last year's theme, the informal economy, and looking backwards through the list, West, East, Dare to Care, Green Management. Some of you may remember all the way back to the anniversary. And what have we got here? Internationalizing the academy. Why do we have a theme? A theme creates something of a sense of community amongst such a vast heterogeneous assemblage as we have here today, nearly 8,000 people. It can also be a prompt to reflect on some important topic. And sometimes that topic imposes itself on us through the power of events taking place around us. Sometimes it imposes on it seems like a good idea because it's an important theme that risks being overlooked by the division of intellectual labor that characterizes the way the Academy works. Next year, the theme is going to be of that second type. Deborah Shapiro will be our program chair, and the theme next year, as some of you, I hope, are already aware, is the power of words. Deborah wants us to get thinking about the ways in which how we say things and the new media that are influencing the way in which we communicate our meanings, how those are shaping the impact of what we say on individuals, groups, organizations, and larger social structures. This seems like a very promising, exciting theme, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the interesting sessions that will result from your reflections on that topic. She's announced the theme early so that some of you may shape your research over the coming months in order to submit something related to what seems like a very exciting topic. This year, the theme is of that other kind, a theme that it seemed to me and to my colleagues with whom I shared the proposal, a theme that imposes itself on us by virtue of the changes taking place around us. It does seem that indeed capitalism is in question. Financial crisis unfolding around the world over these last decades, prolonged economic recession, depression, austerity characterizing many regions of the world, growing inequality in many countries around us, growing frustration of economic aspirations, mounting environmental crisis facing the planet, and then the proliferation of protest movements of various kinds, various parts of the world. Of course, there's many factors that contribute to these problems and the emergence of these protest movements. The causes are complex, and it does seem like a good idea to focus our attention on one element of that broader causal structure, namely the underlying political economic system we call capitalism. It seemed like a particularly appropriate theme since we're meeting at Disney World, and Disney World seems like such an extraordinary monument to both the wonderful and terrifying aspects of capitalism's impact on culture, work, city planning, our children's dream life. But this theme's a little different from some of the others, perhaps, that we've seen in previous years by asking us to focus on the broader context of management and of our research. And this broadening of our field of view may feel like a bit of a stretch. My sense of it is that when the context changes, when these contextual pressures mount, that inevitably changes what we research, what we teach, what our students are expecting us to help them understand. And that even if we don't feel by virtue of our backgrounds particularly well equipped to engage these broader issues, we're scholars after all, and we have the intellectual resources with which to broaden our own understanding of things. And in reality, we have in our midst many scholars who already have deep methodological and philosophical and theoretical resources with which to address these broader structural changes. Given the challenge of forming a theme program around such a topic, I needed a team of colleagues to help me, and so I reached out to people who I felt had unusual breadth of vision and depth of scholarship, and they worked with me over the course of the last year, and I wanted to begin by thanking them. Jerry Davis from Michigan, Tom Kochen from the MIT Sloan School, Carrie Liana from the University of Pittsburgh, and Stella Nkomo from the University of Pretoria. We formed a team, and Lord knows these folks invested enormous parts of their lives to make this this theme possible for us. They reviewed a lot of submissions that came directly to our committee for PDWs and symposia. They took the lead in organizing several sessions that you see on the program today, and we also selected sessions that were nominated by the division and interest group program chairs from amongst the sessions that they had already accepted to be put on the Sunday All Academy theme program. I love that model. It seems like a terrific way to make sure that this thematic program on Sunday is integrated with the life of your divisions, and I'm hoping you feel that way too at the end of the day. So I wanted to thank these four colleagues on my behalf, but on yours as well, for the work that they've done in helping put together this program. So, if capitalism in question is our theme, the first question surely is, what do we mean by capitalism? That's not there's no obvious answer to that question. There's different theoretical perspectives one might bring to bear on this. I sought a fairly elementary, simple definition focused on three key structural features that seem to differentiate capitalism from previous, historically earlier systems of economics. So we have a market competition driving the behavior of firms. We have wage employment within those firms, and we have limited government control over the conduct of those firms. Those features of capitalism each come with very powerful benefits, especially in comparison with pre-capitalist economic systems. Market competition creates immense pressure on firms to innovate and respond. Wage employment within the firms allows workers to move between firms. Workers are not tied to any individual firm. And limited government over economic activity gives us a very valued freedom to produce what we want, sell what we want, buy what we want, to whomever we want. These same features, of course, come with some downsides, some risks, some costs. Market competition creates enormous pressure to innovate and respond. But on the other hand, markets themselves are not a very stable institutional form. They're rather crisis-prone. If we needed reminding, we might recall that some 10 million Americans have been evicted from their homes since 2007, when they were no longer able to afford their mortgages. The market's time horizons are necessarily rather short compared to the long-lived problems of environmental sustainability and even the time frame required to sustain a viable pension system. Firms that are under profit pressure, under a private property regime, don't pay much attention to either the positive or the negative externalities associated with their activities. These are pretty important downsides. The wage employment system gives workers the freedom to move between employers, and that's inestimably valuable for people coming from worlds in which they may have been bonded for life under a regime of slavery or feudal serfdom. But it does mean that unless you have the financial resources to start your own business, you're obliged, compelled to work for somebody else in exchange for a wage, to submit to some employer's authority. And that experience of submission, where a boss tells you what to do and how to do it, that experience of domination contrasts rather sadly with the experience of democracy in our political sphere. And second, it does seem that this system of wage employment creates a structural difference between revenues associated with wages and revenues associated with profits. And that seems to be leading to ever-widening gulf of inequality of wealth and income. And then finally, limited government over economic activity clearly has important benefits for our freedoms, but at the same time, that limited government restricts the ability of government to resolve some of the problems associated with either market competition or wage employment. It also means that the government has a limited capacity to express any collective will in shaping the direction of economic development. And in recent years, that's become a source of important political contention as we experience this period of prolonged recession and people demand of government that it step in to remedy that crisis. I would say, too, reflecting on the role of government in this capitalist structure, that even though the role of government in the conduct of economic affairs itself is very limited, and for which we're very grateful, it takes considerable government coercive force to sustain a system of private property and the resulting inequalities of wealth and income. And then finally, I'd say under this heading that the debates here are not just over the role of government, but also the process of government itself. If government doesn't control business, the evidence of many countries over recent decades seems to suggest that business ends up controlling government. And so limited government seems in many places to have become government limited to the service of business interests. So given these downsides, risks, costs of the capitalist structure, it's not surprising that in some countries, folks have moved away from the canonical competitive market, free market model, and we see a proliferation of varieties of capitalism that variously attempt to broaden the objectives of the firm to encompass social, economic, as well as environmental goals. deepen workers' participation in the management of their firms, strengthen the role of government in the conduct of economic affairs. To map these varieties, there's various ways of doing that. I've been using a little two-dimensional map. I'm not sure this quite does the job, but it's not a bad point of departure for our conversation, perhaps, where you might contrast systems based on whether it's more government-centered or more market-centered, whether we have more or less government control on that horizontal axis, and then on the vertical axis, what role community plays in the conduct of economic affairs. A more individualistic model of self-advancement or a more collective model based on community commitments. And we could perhaps map countries roughly, very roughly, somewhat contentiously on a map like this. It does seem like we might benefit all here in our research as management scholars from work by our colleagues in economics and political science on the varieties of capitalism. We're accustomed in our world of management to look at the effects of different national cultures on the way firms operate, on the experience of work by employees, on the strategies of firms. I think we could broaden our perspective to encompass the impact of these different political economic systems on those same sets of dependent variables. Of course, within any given country, there's scope for variation across regions, across industries, across firms. But these country-level factors, system factors, do seem to constrain that variation through the weight of inherited patterns of wealth distribution, the weight of established law and regulation, the weight of shared values and norms. And indeed, beyond the country-level constraints, there are international constraints at the supranational level, such as we see in the European Union, the World Trade Organization, the international financial markets. But given this limited success that these variants have had in resolving some of the downsides of a capitalist system, and while preserving capitalism's positive features, it's not surprising that debate continues and that there be proponents of more radical changes to the canonical free market system. We do see countries and political programs aimed at a more extensive, more radical transformation, pushing from a system based on competition between firms to collaboration, from a model based on wage employment to cooperative ownership, and one that would give government a far more extensive role in the conduct of economic affairs, moving towards some sort of planning model. And indeed, we could expand that first map so as to encompass a somewhat broader range of alternatives to capitalism as well as variants of capitalism. So adding perhaps state capitalism, state socialism, democratic socialism, cooperative models, and market socialist models. We could tentatively assign some sort of examples to illustrate some of these more radical departures from the canonical free market system. And again, forgive me if the placement of any of these options seems a little contestable, but that's the point. I think this is a discussion worth having. The experience of firms, of workers, of entire industries within these different economic systems, that's rich fodder for our reflection as management scholars, I think. Of course, faced with these proliferating alternatives to capitalism and variants of capitalism, proponents of a competitive market model have not remained silent. In recent years, we've seen an increasingly sophisticated intellectual debate about the virtues of a market process of the competitive free market system, arguing that government failures are perhaps more likely and more dangerous than market failures, arguing that stronger government, even if it promised faster economic growth, would undermine key freedoms, and arguing that stronger community, if that's the direction that you are arguing for, might happen at the expense of individual freedoms. So we find ourselves as management scholars under the weight of these contextual changes drawn into a grand debate. And it's a debate that brings us closer to the concerns of our colleagues in other social sciences, and indeed a debate that brings us closer to the concerns of our fellow citizens. Is capitalism the end of history, as Francis Fukuyama argued a little while ago? Is it perhaps the best system that humanity can imagine for itself, or the least bad system? Or is it perhaps rather as Bertolt Brecht argued a while back when he likened it to the failures of 20th century communism, arguing that the failures of the communist regimes of the 20th century were like the failures of the pioneers of flight, who invented very clumsy flying machines, crashed, often died, but successors to their experiments eventually found a way to make an aeroplane that did indeed fly and got us to Orlando. So our own research, teaching, finds itself drawn into this discussion of a very broad and controversial set of issues at the level of systems and countries, where there's a host of research issues relative to the performance of different economic systems in the economic and non-economic domains. State capitalism, state socialism have been attractive ideas, propositions for developing countries looking for more rapid economic growth. We have sessions in our program here about how these models really perform on the economic dimension and whether they're capable of dealing better with the externalities associated with environmental and social problems. The competitive market model generates very high levels of innovation. We have an extensive body of research on the way the market pressures stimulate innovation and in products and services, but also mounting concerns about the weight of the intellectual property system as a system of private property, operating perhaps as a dampening factor and an anti-commons. We have sessions here on the dynamics of innovation under these different systems. Under this broad heading of systems and countries, the dynamics of the reproduction and change of economic regimes seems also to be an important topic for us based on the evidence that you see in the program on offer here today and over the next couple of days. Within and amongst countries, what are the institutional factors, economic, political, legal, cultural, and the social movements and actors that can resist or drive system change at this fundamental level? We have sessions here, you'll find them in your program, on the moral arguments involved, the pros and cons of capitalism as a system. We have speakers from across the spectrum, from the Cato Institute, the Ayn Rand Institute. We also have sessions with some very interesting senior union leaders. We have the Secretary General of the Secretary Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, Liz Schuler, with us, as well as two extraordinarily innovative union leaders working in healthcare and for the renovation of the entire American union movement. We have sessions on feminist critiques of capitalism, on the culture of capitalism, on changes in the Chinese form of capitalism, on indigenous people's responses to capitalism, on how capitalism encourages or discourages corruption, on how business schools might respond or might contribute to positive change rather than reproducing or exacerbating inequality. We have two sessions, one with a terrific group of thought leader deans and two sessions with such thought leader deans and one session with leaders of the two leading business school accrediting organizations. In terms of firms and fields, we have a host of issues that have been of long-standing interest for folks in our community around alternative governance structures for firms, governance structures that might incline firms to objectives beyond shareholder wealth maximization. We have sessions on the program around social and urban entrepreneurship. We have a session with Rumin Zhang, the CEO of the Chinese firm Haier, many of you have read about. We have sessions on the emergence of benefit corporations with leaders from that movement. Some of you may be aware that recently, in July, Delaware became the 19th state to authorize the creation of what we call B corporations, that is corporations that are allowed to incorporate but serving with bylaws that stipulate that they'll serve not only shareholders but also employees, communities, and the environment. We have sessions from CEOs in American firms that have declared themselves committed to a higher purpose. We have sessions on the new narratives of value creation. And we have several sessions on cooperatives. We have a full-length documentary feature film that'll be on display and two sessions with authors of recent books on cooperatives as a model. Under that same general heading of firms and fields, we've also got a whole portfolio of sessions and research issues for you to reflect on concerning firms' market and non-market strategies, assessing the costs and the benefits to firms, but also to the broader society of firms' interventions in social and political affairs. We have several sessions on corporate social responsibility, environmental sustainability in both developing countries and advanced economies. Under that third heading of people and groups, this, of course, is a long-standing area of research interest for many of us. The effects of government policies and national cultures and systems of labor relations on the social and psychological experience of work. We have some terrific sessions on how capitalist institutional structures have contributed to the growing inequality of employment income, sessions on how people legitimize inequality from a social psychological point of view. As regards the quality and quantity of our non-work life, of course, many of us have been concerned for a long time with understanding how work responsibilities can colonize our non-work lives, but also how that work experience can enrich our non-work lives. We have some wonderful sessions here too on how mindfulness and other forms of forward-looking behavior can awaken people to their experience and enliven them to the possibilities of a better world. So we have some terrific debates ahead. I'm delighted to be able to offer you such a rich program, such a portfolio of contrasting and conflicting points of view. We have some 42 sessions on this Sunday afternoon program of the All Academy theme, plus another 150 sessions that I noticed in the rest of the program that used capitalism as one of their key words. All the management subfields are represented in this program, addressing capitalism's impact and meaning for individuals, firms, and countries, using a range of theories, psychological, sociological, cultural, political, economic, historical, taking perspectives on capitalism itself that range from enthusiastic endorsement to reformist skepticism to radical revolutionary transformation. We have participants from across the spectrum too, and wonderfully, I think, for us, the international diversity of the Academy of Management brings an enormous richness to our reflections on such a theme. So, that's our theme. I'm looking forward to hearing your reactions to the various programmatic elements on offer for you. We need to turn now to the award part of the program. Let's see, we're going to first begin with a special award for B.J. Zerger. Let me explain what this award's about. In a second, we're going to be talking about the Terry Book Awards and the Career Achievement Awards. They're traditional parts of our program. But we wanted to innovate this year by offering a special award on behalf of the entire Academy to B.J. Zerger. B.J.'s commitment to innovation and dedication, her outstanding service to the development of the tools that your program leaders use in putting together your programs has really been outstanding. For the last 5 years, she's been working quietly behind the scenes to build software tools that enable your program chairs to put together your programs, a reviewer matching system that enables us to pass your submissions to reviewers that are best equipped to review them, and this all on an entirely volunteer and behind-the-scenes basis. We thought she's long overdue for some public recognition. So, BJ, thank you so much indeed. So annually, the Academy of Management presents several awards in recognition of outstanding contributions and professional accomplishments and distinguished service. The All Academy Awards presented during the course of this year's meeting will include the Most Outstanding Article of 2012 for AMJ, AMR, AMLE, and AMP, as well as program awards, including the Newman Award for Best Papers based on a dissertation and the Carolyn Dexter Award for Best International Paper. Those awards will be announced at various meetings over the course of the next couple of days. But this morning, Karen Golden-Biddle, chair of the Career Achievement Awards, will join us to present 4 Distinguished Lifetime Achievement Awards, and then Anne-Marie Knott will follow her to present the Academy's George R. Terry Book Award. Please join me in welcoming Karen Golden-Biddle.
We're going to keep moving forward here. I got it. Thank you. Somebody's doing the slides for me. Appreciate that. These awards recognize long-term excellence over one's career in the areas of education, service, scholar practice, integration, and scholarship. I first would like to thank the members of the committee who graciously agreed to serve and reviewed and had to distinguish among many outstanding nominations this year. Robin Ely from Harvard Business School, Christine Oliver, York University, Nandini Rajagopalan from University of Southern California, and Carl Weick from the University of Michigan. The Distinguished Educator Award. This year's recipient, his contributions to management education are significant and numerous, and especially noteworthy because they span across all the criteria that you see designated for this award: doctoral students, teaching effectively, pedagogical innovation, and developing effective methods, structures, and design. It's my pleasure to announce that R. Edward Freeman is the 2013 recipient of the Distinguished Educator Award. Ed Freeman is University Professor and Ellis and Signe Olson Professor of Business Administration at the University of Virginia Darden School. He earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from Duke University and Doctor of Philosophy in Philosophy from Washington University. He's also held faculty positions at the University of Minnesota and the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School. He's a fellow of the International Association of Business and Society. Ed's letters of nomination speak specifically, enthusiastically, and with great warmth about his teaching and mentoring of doctoral students, as well as students across MBA and executive cohorts. They describe Ed as a master teacher who's an invaluable mentor with profound impact on students. A couple of interesting specifics we found in the committee. He's received the All-University Teaching Award at the University of Virginia, as well as teaching awards at his two previous institutions. The MBA students at Darden regularly use, evidently, all their bid points to secure a spot in Ed's elective course. And he regularly presents at the Academy of Management in the doctoral consortium, including this year in social issues and management. In addition to teaching classes, Ed designed the first course in business and ethics taught at Darden. He also developed elective courses, including a groundbreaking leadership and theater course in which students collaboratively write and perform plays, and a course named Creative Capitalism that focuses on ways businesses can profitably improve society. Perhaps most interesting to us on the committee is Ed's new offering of a MOOC, Massive Open Online Course, due to launch next month. Called New Models of Business and Society, this course already has more than 10,000 registrants. Ed's articulation of stakeholder theory and ethics is having broad and sustained impact on the conversations in business and in business education. Developed in now more than 100 articles, edited book series, and special journal issues and books, these ideas have been integrated into his and others' teaching of MBA students and executives. Two of Ed's nomination letters pointed to his landmark book, Strategic Management, A Stakeholder Approach, as having significant, particularly significant, and wide-reaching impact, deeply influencing these conversations. They shared, over the past 3 decades since its publication, the view that corporations have pluralistic stakeholders has now become commonplace in management research and management textbooks. This book has sparked widespread academic and practitioner interest in ideas about stakeholders. In sum, Ed is a master teacher whose impact has been profound for students and colleagues, for curricular innovation, for mentorship, and for shaping an entire generation of future leaders. Congratulations, Ed, for this well-deserved recognition. The Distinguished Scholar Practitioner Award. This recipient was described as working creatively and with impact on both sides of the theory-practice equation and at the intersection. It's my pleasure to announce that Philip H. Mervis is the 2013 recipient of the Distinguished Scholar Practitioner Award. Phil earned a Bachelor of Arts from Yale University and a Master's of Arts and a Doctor of Philosophy in Organizational Psychology from the University of Michigan. He's been on the faculty of the School of Management at Boston University and held research positions at the Center for Corporate Citizenship at Boston College and the Institute of Social Research at the University of Michigan. He has or currently serves as visiting lecturer at universities across the globe. Phil's scholarly and practice work are interdependent, each richly informing the other. He works in the broad areas of large-scale and organizational change, mergers and acquisitions, leadership development, and the role of business in society. And in each, Phil generates scholarly contributions with an emphasis on implications for practice and puts theory into action through consultation with executive teams and leadership. The nomination letters describe this rich scholar-practice interface. While Phil could have comfortably stayed an academic, he chose a different path, one of a scholar practitioner, and went about attempting to impact organizations through sound theory and research principles. He has a rare gift, says another. He's one of the few people who is comfortable in a classroom as he is in a boardroom. He knows how to work with and speak to practice. In scholarship, Phil has written or edited 11 books, has published more than 100 articles and book chapters, including academic articles appearing in Administrative Science Quarterly, the Journal of Applied Psychology, Academy of Management, as well as writing for the world of business in Harvard Business Review, California Management Review, and much more. His co-authored paper on employee participation in a Quality Circle program, published in the Journal of Applied Psychology, received the OB's Division Award for Scholarly Contribution to OB. His recent paper in Academy of Management Learning and Education on executive development through conscious raising experiences received the Best Paper Award. In practice, Phil was a pioneer in researching, practicing, and writing about the role of business in society through his early experiences with Ben & Jerry's and later Royal Dutch Shell. His vita today, taking a look, shows that Phil has roots that are deep and wide in the world of practice, having worked with several CEOs, boards, chief technology officers, and government agencies across the world, while remaining strongly embedded in the academic tradition. Phil also has written about the scholar-practitioner interface, including, and I just include a couple of titles, Managing Research Whilst Researching Managers, Academic Practitioner Learning Forums, a new model for interorganizational research, and a recent co-authored chapter, Rigor and Relevance in Organizational Research, Experiences, Reflections, and a Look Ahead. In reviewing Phil's nomination, the review committee noted the tremendous variety, originality, and depth of his projects, and his large number of successes using unconventional interventions. In addition, we found his expert navigation of this role very impressive, especially for its global reach, and for the fact that much of Phil's contribution was produced away from academic tenure tracks while still maintaining high credibility with full-time tenure track academics. Congratulations, Phil, on this well-deserved contribution. Distinguished Service Award. I'm just going to move right to it. Here's the award criteria. And this year, every single one of these award recipients worked all the criteria across for the award. It's not that they were in one criterion only, they were able to achieve in all. It's my pleasure to announce that James P. Walsh is the 2013 recipient of the Distinguished Service Award. Jim Walsh is the Arthur F. Turnow Professor and the Gerald and Esther Carey Professor of Management at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. He earned a Bachelor of Arts at SUNY Albany, Masters of Arts degrees at Columbia University and the University of Chicago, and his Doctor of Philosophy at Northwestern University. He's also been on the faculty of the Tuck School at Dartmouth, and he's a Fellow of the Academy of Management. For the past 25 years, Jim has provided important, creative, and tireless service to the Academy of Management. He was an early champion of, and when established, served in leadership positions for the Managerial and Organization Cognition, at the time Interest Group. Soon after, he was elected program chair of the Organization and Management Theory Division, serving in leadership positions, including division chair. In 2006, Jim was elected to the executive leadership positions of the Academy, serving as Vice President-elect, Vice President, President, and then past President through 2011. Not resting at that point, during this time he became founding co-editor of the Academy of Management Annals that provided management scholars an important outlet for longer theoretical papers and synthesis for existing literatures. In addition to getting approval for the journal by the Academy Board, he co-managed the first 5 years of the journal, establishing it as a major outlet for management knowledge. After his service as Academy President ended, Jim organized the Academy's first ever Africa initiative. This involved 2 week-long faculty development workshops held in Uganda and Rwanda for early career African scholars to participate in research capacity building work. Jim led these workshops along with faculty colleagues in Africa. Those involved in these workshops described in their letter the exemplary, humble manner in which Jim engaged these young scholars. Quote, "He was never a highfalutin top management scholar, but always simply Jim. This may not sound like a big deal, but Jim spent hours reading the research of the participants and providing them with feedback and encouragement. For many, it was the first time they were able to get such high-level feedback for their work." As part of this initiative, Jim also championed and organized the 4-day Academy Africa Academic Conference this year, which attracted 300 scholars from around the globe, preceded by a 1-day doctoral workshop. Jim's leadership in this conference led those involved to write, quote, "Without the extraordinary service and leadership of Jim Walsh, the Africa Academy of Management would not have made the transformation from a small group of management scholars meeting informally at Academy meetings to a budding formal association." In addition to his substantial service contributions, what stands out in the letters for the committee was his generosity and the numerous ways that Jim has gone out of his way to reach the scholars around the world. These hallmarks of his leadership service are an inspiration to many. As one person shared in a letter, "I will leave it to others to list Jim's enormous contributions to our field and the Academy. I would like to add a personal note. From my point of view, Jim's major service has been to inspire. He lifts the aspirations of everyone he comes in contact with." Congratulations, Jim, for this recognition. I'll tell you, this committee is the best committee to be part of, so if you're ever asked, do it. You see such great things about the Academy people. And finally, the Distinguished Award for Scholarly Contributions to Management. So you see the 3 criteria. Once again, the recipient has met all 3, exceeded. It's my pleasure to announce that Michael Tushman is the 2013 recipient of the Distinguished Award for Scholarly Contributions to Management. Mike Tushman is the Paul Lawrence MBA class of 1942 professor of business administration at Harvard Business School. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from Northeastern University, his Master's of Science from Cornell, and his Doctor of Philosophy from MIT. He's also been on the faculty of Columbia University's Business School. He's a Fellow of the Academy of Management. Mike is an eminent scholar who made noteworthy, distinctive, sustained, and highly recognized contributions to how management researchers understand central questions about change, leadership, innovation, and design. He's published more than 100 articles, books, and chapters that have been collectively cited more than 34,000 times. He's been honored as Distinguished Scholar of 2 Academy divisions, Organization and Management Theory, and Technology and Innovation Management. He has published award-winning academic papers, including awards from the Academy of Management Review and the Stefan Schrader Award for his paper in Research and Organization Behavior. Most recently, he was awarded the Sumantra Ghoshal Award for Rigor and Relevance in the Study of Management from London Business School. From his early work on boundary roles and gatekeeping, continuing through collaborative work with his doctoral students on technological discontinuities and change across multiple levels, punctuated equilibria, and his latest work on networks, open innovation, and organizational boundaries, Mike has worked on critically important research questions that have a distinctive and integrative core. He is passionate and systematic in his investigation of how technological change affects organization performance and survival, and more generally, how organization design and innovation are achieved and contribute to organizational effectiveness over time. As one letter noted, quote, Mike has had the tenacity and creativity to create conceptual insights and empirical studies that have lasting impact. What is also striking about Mike's work is that his contribution to scholarship also extends to practice, as evidenced in his practice-oriented articles and books. 2 papers on organizational ambidexterity received the California Management Review's Accenture Best Paper Award. The impact on practice is also evidenced in the use of his insights and findings from research, for example, congruence model, ambidexterity in basic organization behavior courses for MBA students, as well as in doctoral courses in organization theory. The nomination letters noted, Mike stands out as an example of someone whose research meets the test of external validity. To me, Mike Tushman is the contemporary exemplar of a scholar who attains the highest possible scholarship and demonstrates policy and practice impact. A notable feature of Mike's scholarship, expressed in all letters, is his commitment to mentoring the next generation of young scholars. He is well known and highly respected as a wonderful colleague who is supportive and generous, investing substantially in others, including the training of his doctoral students. As one letter writer commented, and it's a perfect summation of this, when it comes to scholarly contributions, Mike Tushman characterizes the perfect trifecta of scholarship. He's produced a long line of highly influential published works. His research has affected both scholars and practicing managers, and he has brought along a large cadre of doctoral students, many of whom I know are here, who are highly active researchers and successful academics in their own right. Congratulations, Mike, on this well-deserved.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. It's also a pleasure to have been the chair of the Terry Book Award Committee. I had 2 distinct honors. Well, first was that I was able to read a number of wonderful books, 50 in fact, outside my comfort zone, which is always very good for me. And the second honor was that I was able to pick my committee. And I'd like to tell you how extraordinary they are, and I'd also like to thank them for their participation. Christine Beckman represented OB and OT. She's at UC Irvine. Emilio Castilla represented sociology and human resources at MIT. David Kirsch was kind of our utility player. He covered economic history, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And Jerry McDermott took on political science as well as global management. So our charge was to pick books from a set who had been published within the last 2 years, had been judged to make the most outstanding contribution to the advancement of management knowledge, and whose contribution can be, well, their contribution could be either to theory or to practice. So we culled through a number of books, very interesting and important books, a marvelous set. But what we did to distinguish who our finalists were is we also imposed impact and rigor as the most significant criteria above doing cool and interesting stuff. The finalists this year, first, these are all in alphabetical order, is Ron Adler's book, Wide Lens. Ron tackles the question, why do we sometimes see superior technologies not winning in the marketplace? We've seen answers to that in the past. He has a very new and interesting argument that's very compelling and very rigorous, that of complements in the ecosystem. The second book, Don Palmer, takes on the question that's very interesting to all of us these days, is why do we see organizations doing wrong things? The typical answer is that we have bad apples. What he does is he presents an alternative sociological perspective that has to do with organizations and their structures and conduct. The third book, Victor Ney and Sonia Oper, Capitalism from Below, looks at the Chinese phenomenon. How were they so dramatically successful following communism when we see the Eastern European experiment, which was aided by all kinds of very prominent economists, seems to have faltered? Okay, and they have very interesting answer, which is entrepreneurship. And what's nice about that is that's going to help people understand the question of how do we create these entrepreneurial milieus. Noam Wasserman's book, The Founder's Dilemma, tackles the problem that most businesses fail. Okay? A lot of that is structural. The market's just not there. The technology is not there. And he tackles the part that's actually fixable. And a very well-researched book, he identifies the things that you can actually fix and provides some solutions to how to actually fix them. And finally, the last book in alphabetical order is Patricia Thornton, Willie Ocasio, and Michael Lounsbury's book, The Institutional Logics Perspective. Those of you that are familiar with institutional theory remember that here we are at the Academy. That's somewhat frustrating because institutional theory says there's no role for managers. And they take on a new view of that theory and introduce the purposeful actors. And they lay the foundations for that new theory. So the winner is The Institutional Logics Perspective. And the winner is Capitalism from Below.
Thank you, Karen and Anne-Marie, and thank you to these exemplary scholars whose names have been up on a screen for these last few minutes. These are really truly inspiring colleagues. It's my privilege now to introduce Ming-Jer Chen, our president, for his what we call presidential address. Ming-Jer has been president this last year, and it's my privilege to say a few words about him. He has an extraordinary record himself of volunteer service, having been an associate editor at AMR and chair of the BPS division, and serving the several years on the executive committee of the Academy. An extraordinary career, too, as a scholar. An Academy of Management Review Best Paper of the Year award, impressive continued stream of publications, both academic and practitioner oriented, and himself a fellow of the Academy of Management. He's currently the Leslie Grayson Professor at the Darden School at the University of Virginia, but also keeps one foot in China at the Fudan University in Shanghai and the National Chengchi University in Taipei, and as a senior fellow in the Asia Pacific Institute of Business at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I don't want to know how many air miles he's accumulated over the last 5 years. I want to add a personal note. I've had the chance to work with Ming-Jer these last few years on the executive committee, and it's been a very powerful moving experience for me to have worked with him. Ming-Jie is an extrovert. He's always challenging you, but scrape away a little bit at the surface and you discover a very gentle man, a supremely considerate person, generous in the extreme, and someone really committed to building community amongst everyone around him. We welcome Ming-Jie Chen for his presidential address.
Good morning. No response. It has been my greatest honor to have the opportunity to serve you as the 68th President of the Academy of Management of the past year. And today, have the special privilege of delivering my remarks to you. And I still remember very clearly, 27 years ago, in 1986, as a doctoral student, for his first academy meeting, listening to Fred Luthen's presidential speech, I could have hardly imagined today that I would have the opportunity to speak to so many distinguished colleagues and to meet so many new friends, and also reunite with some of my old friends who have been with me for every step of my journey to this place and the point. The very first things I learned after I arrived in the United States is that Americans always begin a talk with a joke. And the Chinese, on the other hand, always begin with an apology. And given my ambicultural, balanced Chinese-American background, today, for those people who know me well, I constrain myself only share one joke, but at the same time, I would like to apologize for it in advance. For those of you who have been working with me on competitive dynamics, and actually, by the way, how many of you are doctoral students? Okay, the next quiz actually will be the bonus question in your comp next year. So, competition and cooperation. A shopkeeper was dismayed when a brand new business, much like his own, opened up next door, and I put the big sign which read, "Best deals." And he was horrified when another competitor opened up on the other side, announced this arrival with an even larger sign reading, "Lowest prices." So he was panicked until he got ideas that he put even a bigger sign which read, "Main entrance." In a spirit of making the world smaller, and also making the academy community closer. Today, against the academy's tradition, I would like to engage in a community-wide communication with you. And then, if we have time, I will share with you my thoughts and also raise a few questions for you to help you move forward. Let me start with my contribution. Let me start with my my recognition of the award winners again. Certainly you know, in America, there's concept called there's no free lunch. So certainly this recognition will come in with this caveat. So let me start with my distinguished colleague, Ed Freeman. Ed, do you remember the other day I was walking toward the parking lot and you were with Jim Freeland and you say something to me, and do you still remember that? What do I have? I was holding 2 cups in my hands. Now you remember. So
yeah, you had 2 cups of coffee.
Okay. How can you assume that's coffee?
Yeah, I didn't know what it was.
Okay. So basically, I still remember vividly you say 2 cups in 2 fists.
Yeah.
And it so happened it's 1 coffee and 1 tea. And I try to balance in every sense. So do you know which one is tea, which one is cup?
I assumed it was either both coffee,
I'm
your
left-handed.
American side, or both tea, your Chinese side. So I didn't even think about one is coffee, one is tea.
Okay. Have you ever mixed the two? Have you ever tried Tiffy or Coca? If not, when I return to Charlottesville, I will make one for you.
I really can't wait for that. That'd be great, Minger. Thanks.
Okay. Now I want to turn to Mike Tushman, the scholarly contribution award with his beloved wife, Marjorie. So, Mike, the other day, Lori Rosenkopf, your proud doctoral student of Wharton, she asked me, what's my relationship with you? So I told her that I first met you when I joined Columbia in 1989. My colleague, Don Hembrick, who was sitting on the back, he was trying to hiding away from me. And the head of the strategy group at that time assigned me to be evaluated by you on an annual basis. Do you still remember what was the advice you gave to me at our first meeting?
Minger, I actually don't, but, but I'm sure it was keep up the great work.
Okay. I think the first advice you gave to me, which I truly took into my heart very deeply, however, I applied in a very different way, is working closely with doctoral students. Do you still remember the second advice you gave to me?
I don't, Minger.
Okay. The second advice you gave to me was publish in ASQ, more so in SMJ. For those who are new, Administrative Science Quarterly, we have Jerry Davis, the editor, sitting right there, and we'll also have a strategic management journal. And do you know how long it took me to struggle with and figure out, as a greenhorned academic, the differences and the tensions between ASQ and SMJ, and even more broadly between organizational theory and the strategic management?
I don't, but I know it's good for you, Minger.
Okay. Now I have to turn to Don. I don't care where you sit. I'm coming to find you. Okay. Don, do you still remember? Do you still remember my first faculty meeting? Just come over. You've never been so shy. Come on, come. Do you still remember my first faculty meeting at Columbia?
Vividly.
Oh, you are on the oath like Bill Clinton, actually.
No, I don't, Minger.
Okay.
You have to remind me.
Okay, I will remind you. I still remember it was held at 3:07.
Did you say hell?
No, hell. Actually, you kind of kick off the meeting at 3:07 in the in one of the afternoons.
Okay.
I still remember it was a Wednesday, and for some very bizarre kind of reasons. And I still remember, do you remember what did you say to me?
You
No.
have to remind me.
You truly made a joke of my Taiwanese clock. And you know, actually, I have to tell you, for a Chinese, time is forever. So actually, by Chinese standard, I'm 3 months ahead rather than 3 minutes late.
Gotcha.
Okay. Good. So I have to let. Oh, wait. Not yet. Okay. I was intrigued. You always put, you post your office hours on the. I remember your office is 7-11 euros.
That's right.
And normally your office hour was 10 to 12 o'clock, normally on Wednesday, because Don, for those of you who do not know him, he's the most efficient person I've ever seen in the world. Is Bert here? Bert is not here. So you finish teaching at 9:50, so your office hours is 10 o'clock.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, why did you want to do that? Like most of my Columbia colleagues, you know, Joe or Kathy, why do you want to put your office hours on the door?
Why?
Why?
I just thought it was the cool thing to do.
And also responsible to students, right?
Responsible.
Okay,
Right.
good.
And that's my middle name.
I know that. I socially respond. Okay, now I want to turn to the dean of my current school, Bob Brunner. Bob, thank you so much for flying to here from Charlottesville and with all those hassles. Could you please tell my mentor, Don Hambrick, and also the rest of the audience, what's the common practice of posting office hours at the Darden?
We do not post office hours at Darden at all.
Why was that? Or why is that?
Because we are members of a community and we insist on being there presently for one another. And to post office hours would imply that we intend to be absent.
Okay, thank you. Where's Andy Vandervan? So he know I'm going to calling upon him, so I skipped that. And actually, and you have to be in substitution. I'm wondering, Paul, you'll be next, very quick, coming up very quick. Do you remember what was the theme of last year's conference? I'm sorry, the theme of your speech, the title of your speech.
Title of my speech or last year's speech?
The title of your speech.
If I forgot, I'm in big trouble.
I will encourage you, I think my job is to truly calm you down.
Oh, to calm me down?
Yeah, like I always have been for the last year. So I'm just wondering, do you
I
still
think it is dare to care.
Dare to care, and then passion and compassion.
Passion and compassion in
I'm
management.
wondering, what is the connection between the title of your address and with this being MB culture?
Well, we should care for everybody in the world.
Okay, good. Let me share with you a conversation I had with Andy Vandervan, our new editor of the Academy of Management Discoveries. And after, he listened to your speech, he got excited. And so I said to Andy, and Andy, I think the book you published in 2007, Engage Scholarship. The word engage is redundant. And he looked at me and he said, why? And I say, at least in the Chinese context, by definition, a scholar has to be engaged with the community, with the society at large, and he or she has to dare to care. So in a very typical Vandervan gentleman-like manner, he asked, Minjer, can you give me references? And I say, Andy, I can't. Because this has been in the Chinese history for the last 3,000 years. Each and every piece of writing includes this. So that's very much. By the way, where are my beloved doctor students? Where are they? Who are the doctor students in the audience? Please raise your hand. Okay. I'm wondering, by the way, I still remember my first doctor student making first. How many of you will make first presentation at the academy? Okay, so are you ready for the presentation? Are you nervous? You're nervous, okay. How do you prepare?
First, I prepare the PowerPoint, and according to my PowerPoint, I prepare my presentation, but I'm not ready.
Okay, good. Let me share with you the things I did at my first presentation. I went to the room that I was going to give the presentation the day before. However, the room was not ready until after midnight. So I had to practice my first presentation in front of hotels, service people, when they're moving and shuffling all the tables and the chairs. So I hope you would take this advice, maybe you'll be ready. So I'm wondering, for our doctor students, how does this being MB culture mean to you personally? Everyone? I think we have one right here. Could you please tell me, so how do you make the connection between the two? Like just right here. Good. Just share with us, please. Yes. So what's the connect? So what does the being MB culture mean to you?
Being inclusive.
Being inclusive. In what sense?
Being open to others' ideas and also able to convey my own to various audiences.
Okay. Does this imply only in the cultural sense, institutional sense, or it can be
anything?
Anything. So any kind of the opposite, you will find the opportunities to somehow to integrate.
Yes.
Anyone else? Who are the new members of this organization? Who are the new members? The new members of the academy, please. Could you please stand up? Could you please stand up? Let's just give them a round of applause. Okay, yeah. I think you are truly the newest generations of scholars and the members of this organization, and this organization and our profession will be in your hands. So do you still remember this? How many of you attend the new member orientation? So I'm just wondering, what does the being MB culture mean to you? Do you have any international members? Yes. What does the being MB culture mean to you? Yeah, please. Yes. You can just respond from there. They are going to take you once you start speaking.
I'm sorry. So, I'm from Japan. So I'm just a professor, but so I'd like to expand my world, research world to the world. So,
okay. So basically, you want to contribute from the Japanese viewpoint, the literature, to the world literature, and vice versa. You want to take back whatever is the best practice back home, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
good.
you very much.
By the way, how many of you attended the 2011 opening Sunday morning. How many of you? Okay. Do you remember what's the theme of the 2011 conference? Do you still remember? Okay. Is East meets West, or West meets East? West meets East.
West meets, oh, right.
Oh, all right.
I thought it was East meets West.
Oh, yes. So actually you can, because of that combination, I got like 4 or 5 different groups of advisors suggest me to try all the permutation. So I'm wondering whether there's any differences. And I'm wondering what's the connection between that conference theme and this notion of a being and be culture.
See, East was always there compared to the West.
The world is always flat.
It is true, but when it comes to knowledge and origin, it isn't flat.
Right.
And so we do believe the knowledge rose from the East and moved to the West, and now West wants to meet the East because West has really risen much higher than the East.
Okay.
But in the process, West has also lost the knowledge that really survived the world and the humanity for several millennia.
Oh,
so now
so
West
you are
wants
concerned about the humanity part.
Exactly.
I think that's kind of, that's, yes, please. Yes, over there. Yes, please stand up. Finally, I heard the term humanity. We have been talking about, it's like when I first joined Dalton, the first time ever I heard the term of community, which I have not before then. Yes?
Minjer, when you talked about ambicultural, I was thinking of an appropriate example. It's speaking the same language, but putting on a different accent depending on who you're talking to. My daughter who grew up here does that all the time.
Okay, did she,
speaking the same
by the way, did she speak with the Brooklyn accent? Oh, no, sure. Okay, yeah. Let me just get, how many of you have seen this? The previous slide, please. Yeah, I think this, what's on the top? Which city is it? New York. Which one is on the bottom? The Shanghai. So one is reflection of the other. How about the next slide? How many of you have seen these photos? Those are the 100 movers and shakers of the Academy who helped me that year, either as the PDW chair, or division, program chair, and so on. I'm wondering, could you, for those of you are in these photos, could you please stand up? Come on, at least we have Nancy. Where is Nancy? Yeah, could you please stand up? Let's just give them all, a round of applause. Thank you. To be honest, this is truly part of my effort of the building the Academy as ambicultural organization. And let me very quickly give you a few highlights. Membership has increased by 60%, and 40% of our members now outside the US, and half of the 20 major initiatives planned by the Academy relate to the 20 major initiatives. And thanks to my colleague and the predecessor, Jim Walsh, and the many other colleagues, we have the first ever in the 70 years history in the South Africa Conference, And then finally, thanks God, we have this, the first teaching and learning conference. And then we have this online of the Academy of Management Discovery was launched to combine the strengths of Academy of Management Review and also and the review. Paul, you know you won't be exempt, regardless what kind of the nice words you say about myself. I'm just wondering, what is the connection between the theme of this year's conference, capitalism is at stake, and being agriculture? And I will only give you 15 seconds, summary of, I know you can talk for 3 hours, but I will give you only, please.
It has to do, I think, with the internationalization of our academy. We've got so much to learn through dialogue with people coming from different economic systems and from people struggling in their countries for the creation of alternative economic systems, that stretching to embrace these diverse perspectives will enrich us all.
What do you think is possible to reconcile the differences between state-driven economies and the market economy?
That's a homework assignment for which I'm not prepared, Professor.
Okay, how about let me share with you one example at the macro level. By the way, how many of you have ever used the case called Lincoln Electric? Okay. And, okay. You knew, you're sitting in the wrong spot. I'm wondering, could you please help the audience? Microphone. Could you please help the audience? What's about Lincoln Electric? Do you remember?
It was a while ago, but what I mostly remember was the one, it's a learning story, and the second is the keyboard, pressing the keyboard throughout the lunch hour.
Okay. Who else can share with, Lincoln Electric has been my, the case I like the best. And how many of you remember this company? Please. Yes. What kind of things you like about Lincoln Electric? Just one idea that you think.
The sort of the democratic approach to all of the way that they run the company.
Okay, so on the one hand, they encourage internal or even individual competition to the extreme, because they think, this is what the capitalism is about. So they use the piece rate system among many other things. But on the other hand, they have this lifetime employment. So when I use this, Wenchen? So when I use this case, actually, in the United States, all the executives I work with think this is truly the best of American capitalism. I use the same case in China with a group of very high-level senior executives from the state-owned enterprise. They applaud. This is the best of socialism. And just a few months ago in Guangzhou, I gave a keynote speech to an international forum. And one, the senior executive from Israel came to see me after my speech, said, I have been following Lincoln Electric for the last 25 years. I always think it's a Jewish enterprise. So I'm wondering, I think certainly this is open to everyone. Why is this the case? And what kind of ideas that the Lincoln Electric can provide for us? Yes.
I think the word is coexist. I mean, something looks different, but we can learn to each other and work together, find a way. So coexist is a
Coexistence.
is a word.
Okay,
I'm thinking,
good.
yeah.
Any other comments from the audience? Sandy, this is a lovely, the micro case, and the macro people also like. So to some extent, it's a very good way to balance between micro and macro, actually. Now, given all those kind of questions, I want to put things into perspectives. I have been extremely fortunate to have the privilege to be mentored by those two gentlemen. The person to the right of your screen, how many of you remember him? Yeah, Bill Newman, and he was the 6th president of the Academy of Management. And then one of our most distinguished awards was really named after him. I'm just wondering, what kind of things that you remember about Bill Newman? Kathy, do you remember? What's one thing, I can only take, as a very much a student of one, what's the one thing you remember most about Bill?
He did more reviews every month for the journals than I could do.
Even at his final days?
Yes, all the time. He was always reading new articles and giving feedback. He gave feedback to me on every book I wrote.
Okay. I had the privilege to work closely with him for the last 12 years of his life. And let me share with you some of the things that he did in his final years. And he spent quite a bit of time working on a project and asking the question, what's the relevance of the Quaker ideas for the educational policy and the social issues for the next 60 years? At the age of 87, he went to Indonesia. At the age of 88, he went to Tibet, and at 89, he traveled to Silk Road. And then at the age of 90, he went to North Pole. And one day I visited him at his retirement home outside Delaware. And he was just crawling on the floor and just reading all the map. And I said, Bill, what do you plan to do up there, North Pole? And he said to me, Minjer, 40% of the oil in the world is in this area. I want to go up to take a look. And we talk about, my colleague Paul talked about the financial meltdown of 2008 and 2009. And Bill already told me in the mid-90s, something like that was about to happen. And actually, from his viewpoint, Bill, if you are still around, and I think you will agree with me, the worst has yet to come, because we have not learned our lesson, to be very honest. And the last night I was at the forum. The financial crisis of 2008 was not an economic financial problem, it was management problem. And the reason it was a management problem is we lost touch with humanity. So I think that's the kind of things is really very much cast my fear in terms of helping the organization like Academy of Management. The person to your, by the way, the one thing I have learned from Bill is he's extremely intelligent, extremely sharp, at the same time extremely kind. So you have to see this very, very interesting balance. And the one thing I have learned from him is that he is more Chinese than most of my Chinese friends. And for a student in Chinese classics, Chinese is a way of thinking. It's not by ethnicity. And let me add the final piece. And I think Buena may remember 4 months before his passing in 2002, he drove down to Charlottesville. He and I co-taught 4 classes together. And the person to your left is Master Yu. I studied the Chinese classic with. Before I left Taiwan, I had a great fortune to study the philosophy, all those Chinese classical pieces between 772 BC and 222 BC. And even one of the philosophers in all the entire work is Zhangzhu. And I had to read plus 11 interpretations 7 times before I left Taiwan, which has a truly profound influence my thinking. So in many ways, and I would say even competitive dynamics represent an bicultural integration in scholarship between the Chinese philosophy and the Western social sciences. And he was actually the cousin of the last emperor in China. And today, most of Chinese do not know him, but trust me, 500 years from now, he'll be one of the 3 Chinese to be remembered. And to give you a sense of what the traditional Chinese teaching means, let me play a short video, and which was taken in his final days. And by the way, he taught until the final months of his life. He passed away at the age of 106.
中国的书多到不可限量。我问问你们，你们这么大年龄的，你们读几本书？哪一个人懂1本书？怎么能用得上？将来我们这个孔学是怎么用这孔学，不是怎么讲这孔学，还讲孔学。古书讲的都好，就是我们看不懂。你要懂得怎么能用，就是证明你看懂了。因为什么读那么多书，什么都用不上，因为你一件也没读。
I think we pretty much have discussed all those points. And before I get to this point marked in red, and I want to share with you, I was born and raised in the most underdeveloped city in Taiwan until I was 17. And this very humble beginning has given me a worldview of being on the margin. And even today, in many ways, I'm on the part of the global mainstream, but I still very much consider myself, from this marginal perspective. So to me, I'm deeply concerned by the divides in many areas. One of such is, I still remember a few years ago, do I have anyone from Brazil? Argentina? Italy? Thank you. I had a chance to speak at HS in Florence, in Buenos Aires, and Sao Paulo, and Milan, with a group of 5,000 business leaders. And one of the biggest concerns, and actually the concern, was the China threat. And at the end of that trip, I traveled to Beijing. I spoke with the China's Larry King, Dr. Larry Lin. The title of his talk was Colonization of China by Western Multinational Firms. So I'm just wondering, what's the difference? For those of us study competitive dynamics, certainly we can explain. Let me look up the next slide. If we truly think expansively, East, West, please wait. And we also have these differences between global and local, research and teaching, rigor and relevance, scholarship and practice, micro and macro, competition and cooperation, entrepreneurship and professional management, profit, nonprofit, and much more importantly, the so-called professionalism and humanity. So the question is truly, ambicultural integration transcend the either or both end, and by taking the best from the opposite while avoiding the worst. And actually, I have to say, Master Yu, for him, the term of management is foreign. But what he truly taught me was management of humanity. So let me, within this context, let me share with you some of the challenges and also opportunity for the Academy. It's really how to balance the Academy's rich tradition and the legacy of voluntarism with the need to professionalize, to take business development orientation. The second is how to fulfill the potential of being, to me, I think there's a potential for us to become an exemplar ambicultural organization, a true global enterprise. Next one. And how to integrate the best of the East and the West, the global and the local, tradition and the innovation, research and teaching, and the scholarship and the service. And how to strive that simultaneously for professionalism and humanity. And finally, which I think is the most important, is how to bring the best of the Academy to the world, and also the best of the world to the Academy. So certainly, very quickly, this is very much my personal mission, and I would really like to invite you all to join me in this ambicultural journey. It's very easy to say, However, the reality is, and I want to show the next one, it's very challenging on a day-to-day basis. And how do you balance between these opposites? So it's very much a dynamic process. It's very much a dynamic process. Okay, now I want to pose a few questions for you to think about. The first one, I'm a strong advocate for this notion of the power of one. I want you to think about if there's only one thing you would do in your career, what is it? If there's only one thing you would do in your life, what is it? And then finally, if there's only one thing you would do for the academy, what is it? And in terms of the tool, as a scholar or teacher, how can you use the ambicultural perspective to enrich your research? And how can you develop an ambicultural mindset and contribute to the ambicultural, the whole management? And finally, how can we make the academy a truly ambicultural organization and one which live up to the motto of bringing the best of the academy to the world and the best of the world to the academy? Now, I want you pair up with your right hand or left person. Pick up one question, spend 3 minutes. I'm running out of time, but I want you to talk to your neighbor and introduce each other, and then just give me 3 minutes discussion on one question you choose. Okay? Mark, how about you talk to our gentleman right now?等一下，我不知道问题从哪里，你没有快啊？刚才我现在给我一个好了。Okay. Who would like to share? One. Who want to share, please? Do you have any volunteers, please? Who want to share one? One is difficult. And I only do one thing in my life. I only ask one research question for the last 27 years. So who want to share one, please? Anyone? So what's your one questions? I will let you to. Yes.
Oh, Ming Chair, I'm sorry, you'll have to put the question again.
Oh, simply,
I
yes.
got so engaged.
But, yeah, okay.
Okay, he's on the committee. No. You're
Okay, please.
You're more senior than me.
Hello, Ming Chair.
Yes.
I'm James, and we reconnected. We actually met in Brisbane.
That's wonderful.
And so we used the third question to reconnect.
Okay, good. That's wonderful. And how about two? Do you have any two? Yes.
Thank you, Ming Chair.
So what's your two?
We actually addressed the one question.
Okay.
My one was to solve a big problem, a big research problem that would improve the lives of many people.
Okay, great. By the way, Kathy, actually now I only teach 1 and 2 in strategy class. That's all I do, actually. I would truly invite you, by the way, I'm going to make my PowerPoint slide available to you, and also the speech will write up to be published in next April's Academy of Management Review, so you will not miss anything in substance. Before I close And I want to, thank you all again. It truly has been my, greatest privilege to serve you this year. But I also want to, take this opportunity, and I've been serving the Academy for the last 27 years. And this dedication would not be possible without the support from my wife and my family. And as something, as testimony, I want share with you at the end of this program, my son Abraham, he made a film, and with some lovely music and some scenes, from the countries around the globe, and to provide his support. And to me, I think that's a reminder of our cultural obligations to this community, to this international society. So I invite you to view the film on the way out. Again, I'm humbled by your support this year, and I'm also truly just delighted and also to have your presence today. And I hope you'll enjoy the culture journey, and very much like myself, and trust me, it's fun and rewarding. And I wish you have the wonderful conference, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that's your claims.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mingjie, for your challenge that you have given to all of us. And it seems to me that in ways, Mingjie has challenged us to think broadly in terms of two issues, but then with depth in terms of the power of one. And so perhaps that is, at least for me, a very important insight that I take from Mingjie's wonderful comments. So thank you very much, Mingjie. We appreciate it. And now it is indeed my great pleasure and honor, on behalf of all of us, to extend our appreciation to our past president, Ann Sui. If I might, please allow me to say a couple of comments about Ann. Professor Sui, Ann, has been a tireless steward of the Academy in terms of efforts that are oriented to pursuing the association's vision and mission. As a volunteer and as a leader, Ann represents the best of what we can be as caring and dedicated members of our association and the academic profession to which we are all seeking to contribute. Ann cares deeply about every individual with whom she interacts and is always extremely kind and considerate in her efforts to understand each person's interests and desires and needs, and her efforts to appropriately address and deal with those. On a personal level, I can say with all earnesty that I have learned a great deal about our Academy and about effective leadership by watching Ann in action and by carefully considering the manner in which she always approaches what some might see as challenges as valuable and wonderful opportunities. I am so appreciative of being able to watch and observe this wonderful behavior that Anne demonstrates on a daily basis. On behalf of our entire academy, Anne, I am pleased to express our deep and sincere appreciation and gratitude to you for who you are, for all of your many contributions, and for the path you are leaving for us to follow as all of us seek to approach serving as well as you have. As we close our session, please allow me to say, as Ming Zhu noted, I am indeed humbled and honored to serve as your president for the coming year. I will do everything I can to understand our collective interests and needs and working collaboratively with you to address those needs. Thank you for the honor of being asked to serve with you. I humbly want to work with you and will reach out in all appropriate ways to do so. So thank you very much. Let's have a wonderful conference as we close, and I look forward to seeing you next year in Philadelphia. Thank you.